Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss out! After what, baby? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will crush.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
On there.
Okay, but anyway, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So like that would be just crazy to see if that was on Earth. It's nuts. And it does again relate to the grandiose of Lord of the Rings.
For sure. Hey, do me a favor and hit me with permission.
Oh, yes,
here
yes,
real quick,
absolutely.
And I'll go ahead and get going here too.
Boom. Yeah.
All
We
right.
can do a cold open or whatever. I don't care.
Oh yeah. Well, we got
rolling.
Game on. We're rolling. Absolutely,
you know?
for sure.
Deep Share, Red Thread,
That's it, man.
Swapcast.
Some random wildness for the folks out there.
Hell yeah.
Some generally fun, loose, and sometimes a little tighter associations. So, it goes all over the place. I'm glad to have got with you though. I've been wanting to, get with you and also to get with Dan and kind of dive into the box saga. It's an epic kind of undertaking. I'm really glad that you guys have gone out there and done some legwork on that and got Roots of Creation going and everything. I thought that was really an ambitious kind of task.
It is. Yeah, it's too much. It's way too ambitious.
Right
like
on.
half the
That's
time
how
we
I
don't
feel
wanna
about
do
Lord
it.
of the Rings. I'm like, wow, just like where do you even start? It's a little more politically charged though when you're dealing with like an actual supposed history, right? Like
True, but as we were saying before we were recording, right? I mean, the correlations to Lord of the Rings, like you and me could do our own little thing right now about Lord of the Rings and box saga, just because there's a lot there.
Absolutely.
In many different forms, but
well, it's crazy. And all of these kind of backstories, the interesting thing I kind of noticed today when I wanted to get with you and kind of speak about like what is the deal, like the first thought was in my mind, what's the deal with Switzerland? You know what I mean?
Deal?
Like, what is the deal? What's the deal with those guys? You know what I mean? Like, no, they're
The
like
neutrality,
neutral,
man.
the neutrality, right? The banking, kind of atmosphere that they embody. They have 3 separate cities. Each one is a banking center for a different group of countries, right? So they're kind of like this hub in the very center here. And then like looking into like the relationship that they kind of have with the outlying areas like the Danes and the Finnish, and kind of this whole area kind of like coexists relatively peacefully. There's a lot of tales in the history of the Swedish and the Swiss and the Finnish about a lot of these wars, but they seem to come out of all of these wars in like from probably the 1400s onto just over 100 years ago, or just about 100 years ago. They come out on top of all these things, all these banker families, just like really they just cash in and then just go back and lie low in the Alps, right? Like they're just like duck back into this little abode, and it's like, what is going on there? How is that possible, right? Everything else has been ravaged. Every other people's history has been rewritten, but you still have like in these Nordic kind of areas, you still have the ancient tales that are still all there, right? You still have for lack of a better kind of phrase, you have like religion. And it's interesting is like the amount of paganism that still exists in that part of the world, although everything that we're told about the Swedish and the Swiss and all of these other groups is kind of centered around like the Crusades and Christianity in a weird way. And but they call themselves Christians, but they're also super about usury, right? Because they're all bankers and lenders and stuff. So it's like, all right, what's really going on over here? And the main thing that kind of caught my mind in thinking about that, well, first of all, these are the whitest people there are, right? I mean, like,
yes, these are the shiny
really
ones.
These are the yes, these are the whitest people that there are on the planet. And if being in the sun, enough causes your genealogy to shift to where you darken, I would imagine the opposite would be the same. That you would, if you spent a lot of time out of the sun per se, you would maybe do the opposite and get whiter, right? So that's kind of been my line of thinking on that, is if indeed it is an environmental thing that causes this melanin situation, maybe that's a part of it. So that kind of, in a weird roundabout way, on top of other things, leads me back to the Box saga, because there's a period of time that these people spend underground, in what you were just kind of talking about, in this cavern Lemminkainen.
Yep.
They're just now starting to explore this and kind of dig it out. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a few hundred miles away from Helsinki, where the Box saga kind of centers, but so
it's like, it's the hellhole, right?
So what's interesting is that, so this is also a Swedish story too, because this is a story about when the Catholic Church was just dominating all of Scandinavia. And supposedly, according to those closest to the Box saga, and Eeyore himself has passed this along, that when the Catholic Church ended up in Uudenmaa, Helsinki, and they were there to destroy everything. So the Bach family, knowing that they were on their way, left, and they had this whole plan to get all of their treasures and all of their memorabilia and their memories and their history the fuck out of Dodge, and buried in their temple, this Lemminkainen temple, where it remains buried till this day, but they've been excavating it for about 20 years now, probably more. And from what I'm hearing, boots on the ground wise over there, it's like very possible that they might be finding something or not finding something this summer, or maybe by the end of this summer. So who knows? But yeah, this Lemminkainen character is a character that pops up in a number of different areas of Finland. And that's why this one man, I can't remember his name, but in the 1700s, he went around to all the different areas of Finland collecting all the folk stories. And he would put the common denominators together into this beautiful thing called the Vainamoinen mythology. And Lemminkainen being the center focus, this figure. And the Bach saga has an entire story about this Lemminkainen and what it meant and all that. So it's very interesting how it directly connects right into their history. But it's also, from what I've also heard from people over there, that it's more taboo to talk about over there than it is over here.
That's
it's like
crazy.
And I've noticed that also in like pop culture, Scandinavian TV shows and things like that. The typical outlook of folklore over there is the same way as typical Americans look at it. I would just say that that's because most of them have been westernized in a way,
Right,
just by the way of the world.
They're taught that it's like, oh, that's just a falsity. Yeah. That's just a story, kids.
But just
story,
like us, we involve so many rituals from back then without even knowing it, even if we're claiming not to believe in things, we're not right. Christians, or we're not this, we're not that, but we carry on so many movements and daily things and words, so many things from these old traditions that root back in these religions and stuff. So
right, and we swear that they're nothing like these savage peoples of the past and
the barbars, right? Them barbarians.
Man, it's wild. And so I just kind of like went on this weird little dive into Switzerland, because it struck me as very strange that it's in the center of everything, can get away with hoarding the Nazi money during World War II, still hasn't nothing has come about that. And it's like, so what's going on? Like, this is a weird neutral kind of place, Swiss bank accounts, you open a Swiss bank account, no tax.
Right.
So I mean, it's been for a very long time a tax haven and a place where the wealthy can get wealthier. And it's so strange. And so, you start looking into something like this, and it's like, where do you even begin? The first thing that I thought about when I thought Swiss, and look at the Swiss flag, you have this white cross and a red background. So, it kind of leans towards like Templar, right?
Right.
But what's also kind of interesting about those colors is that's a big portion of the color in the British flag and many flags over there. But in the British, you have the white and red, and there's symbolism behind this red or this white, and different things. But so in looking at that Templar cross and then realizing, well, hey, in the Vatican they have the Swiss Guard, and it's a Swiss armed force, and it's very strange. They dress very old world, very flamboyantly, maybe you can call it a Renaissance kind of appearance. And these people supposedly are just like the best in hand-to-hand combat, right? But they defend this entire city, the Vatican, or this entire city state, right? Supposedly they're defending it. Who knows how old the agreement is that was made there. But anyway, so I'm looking at Swiss Guard, I'm looking at, all right, Templar Knights, all this other stuff, and you get into the Templar, and these people essentially kind of were the ones behind the Crusades, right? To a certain extent. These were the people supposedly defending the merchant class as they kind of moved funds and or goods in and out of the Holy Land, wherever that was, if it was actually in the Middle East or not, we'll never know.
I don't know, man. I think it's all coming out, but I could just
I certainly hope so, and I definitely am hoping for that. It seems like piece by piece we're kind of gaining some understanding as to what really happened, but like the overall gist of it, for the last probably close to 500 years has been these pockets of war and like assertment. And each, what we now know as a country, kind of has its own history based on when it was last kind of taken over. Like that's when Italy becomes a state, or Spain. It's only like 3 or 4 different like reigns ago. And there's like always this weird association of players behind the scenes funding all this stuff, funding it, protecting the merchants. And who were the merchant class? But these people were the bankers, these people were the lenders, these people were, the ones exploiting everybody else, basically. So you have a lot of this going on. And, a lot of people will look at the Vatican, right? And they'll say, okay, you've got the Vatican as like the spiritual center of this Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire. And then they will always refer to like London. You've got London as the financial center. And, frankly, I kind of beg to differ on that one. Looking at Switzerland and seeing what's going on over there, the small interests of the Swiss that have their hands in everything around the world, all these different wars, they're lending money to all these different sides. And
I was thinking about that too. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just so nuts. And it's like, all right, what's the dynamic? What am I missing here? And, after looking at it, I'm going, well, all right, Templars, we've got, and then I find a painting, an old painting of the Knights Templar playing chess. And so you've got the 2 Knights Templar, and there's 2 different colored columns on either side of this checkered chessboard, right?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot of this stuff, and I'm going, wow. One of the guys has one of his hands hidden in this painting. So it's like, it's got all the earmarks, you know what I mean? It's got all the things that will draw a conspiracy theorist or a cult, studying person's attention. So I'm okay. So, behind the scenes, I'd imagine, that we have these like secret, organizations and groups of people kind of helping to pull the strings from, a step further back. So, you see like all this stuff, and a lot of people want to look at like, all right, the Queen of England is the evil lizard lady, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
She's the ruler, she's the hive mind queen. And it's like, man, I don't know. I think everything that we're seeing actually happen, that we're allowed to see, is all facade. It's all bogus, but like you start following the money, and that's what I kind of started doing, looking into these different rulers and these different kind of the duchy, you know, and all these different people, and how many times that has changed in the last 500 or 600 years, flipped over and been called a different type of government, but had like the cousin of the guy next door who's been running a dictatorship, you know. So a lot of the same stuff as we see today, like with Canada and, you know, mini Castro up there, you know what I mean? So we see all this kind of weird stuff, and it's like I just always was kind of curious, where did this financial kind of paradigm come from? Like, was it a really organic kind of thing, or did it just kind of pop up out of nowhere? And you know, once you start hearing Bach Saga about how they spent some time underground and essentially like reemerged, and you know, if I was stuck underground for an extended period of time and reemerged with my people, I'd be kind of hell bent on destruction too, right? Maybe that's where the term hell bent comes from. Maybe they were in hell and it turned into Helsinki.
So well, I would say when they when they were let free, if you will, it was because of the ice melting or the ice moving. So it was mainly that they were just cut off from everybody else. They had those caverns, but I'll say this: when I was on some shows early on or talking with Dan early on, I think I got things a little misconstrued and thought they were always underground. But I think it's more that the imagery is that they were stuck within this place, this paradise, this original place, because, and the only reason why they weren't dead like the rest of the northern hemisphere during that ice age was because of the Gulf Stream and the volcanic activity that was in that region anyway, or something like that. Like
that
a
makes
combination
sense.
of those two. So there is caverns, but not as I was thinking of it. And I also thought that that's where the blue eyes came from, because we see so many movies about people just losing their eyesight when being underground for so long. And I was associating it in a totally incorrect way, because the blue eyes, the blonde hair, the white skin, it comes from the climate that they were in, and like,
but that makes sense. And just the kind
cut
of
off in the north.
I guess if you were underground, like totally underground. Oh, see, here's where my thought on the underground thing was like, okay, let's say for a while there's cataclysm, which we see evidence of it all around the world, right? Of a monumental kind of thing that happened. So this may very well force people to live in a kind of semi-underground state, right? Learning to do things like cultivate for themselves. And, you know, if they were, maybe this is out on a limb, but if they were understanding thermal energy, if they were understanding, you know, different underground aquifers and a lot of things that are available in that kind of a region, you know, you have the geothermal heat, maybe you could harness for electricity. And, you know, all of the technology we have didn't just come from aliens. It didn't come from nowhere. People need to understand that there's a vast history behind all of these things. And, you know, we're just not told all of it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist and just dropped out of nowhere from the sky. No, it means they've had these schematics and plans and been working on them for extended periods of time. And look at how many complex things are going on in your car. You know what I mean? And you want to say that, okay, basically the history is just before Henry Ford is when the car was invented. Most people think that, you know, most people believe that. They don't know that there's 100 different components built into that car. Each one has, you know, a series of inventors and tinkerers, you know. And so my thought was, all right, if you're spending a significant amount of time essentially unable to go anywhere, you either go crazy, first of all, or, you know, you gain insight on the things that you do have to do, and say you are underground tinkering and this kind of, you know, after looking into Lord of the Rings and stuff like this, I mean, I see parts of humanity in these archetypes of dwarves, and kind of like we were talking about, you know, yesterday we got together and had that round table on Lord of the Rings. So you see these kind of archetypes of humanity in these characters.
Yes.
And, you know, basically, for lack of a better way to put it, white people are just as, you know, ingenious as Indian or anybody else. So you leave them alone for long enough. Give them something to do and the means to do it, i.e., maybe you could call it free energy if they're gaining it geothermally. You know, if there's anything that we kind of are understanding, it's that our technology, the technology of the ancients and things like this, is kind of vastly understated. They're just
Yeah.
now coming out and saying the pyramids are essentially power stations. Finally, over the last 20 years, people have been postulating this with pretty valid evidence, going in, taking readings, that
And now
sort
they're
of thing.
validating it.
Well, validating it through their alternative channels like Gaia and things like this.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
they
Yeah.
put things behind a paywall so that people, will essentially not believe it. And if they do, they've already paid for it. So you know what I mean?
Right.
But
It's a great way to put it out there, not lie, because they know they'll get caught and eventually.
or the people, just the people that watch that are crazy, dude. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, of course.
So,
yeah, it's so easy. It's
these
so
are Alex
easy to
Jones
discredit.
type lovers, and blah blah blah. So
I wonder
yeah.
why that is. I mean, this is a total sidetrack, but why is it that that's such a primal thing right there? That it's so easy to turn a world that is separated by a few thousand years into a total gag. That's so fascinating that we can look at our ancient history and find out the real what's really going on, finally putting all the pieces together slowly now, not even so slowly anymore. And the general public will still kind of looks at it like it's a gag. Like, I can talk to anyone in this community about this ancient tech on some level, and everyone just it's a normal, you know what I mean? But if if that's the beginning of my thought, that's great, because you guys are already there. But I can't, if I have some crazy thought and I want to tell my father about it or something, I can't start with, well, you know how the pyramids are power stations. He's going to be like, I'm done.
Right.
So,
yeah, no doubt. I'm going to go watch Prometheus Entertainment and
exactly. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's another way to manipulate, it's
well, it is. And it's man, it's crazy, dude. I had a crazy weird tangent thought about that whole alien side of things too, but
good.
Yeah, you know what, we'll kind of chew into that right now, and then we'll get into some flag symbolism. Everybody loves a good
I love the flag shit.
evil symbolism within flags and what it all ties to and how it
but the
relates
alien
back.
shit's important too, because
Absolutely.
that's what I always want to talk about. Box Saga,
dude. I love the alien thing. I had an
because
experience with UAPs or whatever that was incredibly interesting.
I have as well.
I'm not sold that they're little gray men in there, in these light orbs at all,
dude. I can't remember who said it, but it was someone within the Twitter sphere of UFO UAP Twitter, and they said, like, the best thing to do is to look up, I'm paraphrasing, to look up and see something and say, I wonder how we could do that, rather than it must be from another planet. You know what I mean? And I'm not discrediting. I love the little green men and all that shit. But
absolutely, I love the physical.
I'm all for it. Always have
representation of something that we don't understand, for sure.
Absolutely.
You have to. Humans have done this through the ages, right?
Yeah,
have
man.
personified things they don't understand.
Yes.
Things as simple as the sun, right? It gets its own deity and its own personality and all of these other things. And depending on what you see the sun outside going through, you might write a different story. So so I'm with the astrotheology side of a lot of these ancient texts and these old scriptures. I'm with that. But you got to realize there's been people manipulating these canons for so long, and these are the same people that, as we'll kind of go into a little bit with the flag situation of Switzerland, is kind of strange. These are the same sun worshiping kind of, priests of the temple, kind of community that was essentially ruling what we now call Egypt, leading with religion and with superior technology and things like this. And so these are the same people. And I found it very interesting to start looking into like the Swiss flags of the different areas. They're called cantons. Right.
Yes.
That's just a small sub-region within, Switzerland. So you have these cantons, and they all have different flags, which kind of suggests, different families, maybe different crests. But one of them is a place called Graubünden, which means coming from the Greys, or bound by the Greys. So you start thinking, wow, aliens, right? And then like I got this crazy thought that was like, okay, well, aliens are probably beneath our feet in these underground bases. And then I'm thinking like, well, dude, what if what if these people that spent all this time underground, they didn't ever come up, dude? What if they're just down there extending their under realm, like through all these dumbs and all this other kind of network of tunnels and maglev trains and all this stuff that's like breakaway civilization. But like, what if this is the original civilization, though? Like, parts of humanity kind of came up out of there, out of wherever there was underground, higher in latitude, what have you, but kind of came out of there. And these people back then were just like today, we're working with these grays, or we're bound by them. Maybe they have given us technology long ago, right? And we've already got it down. Like, we are like the weird stuff that we see going on. They just lay low down there, and like people pitch tales about it. And maybe occasionally one of their grays kind of comes up and goes and flies around, even though he's not supposed to, get shot down. And so they're like, oh, that Gary, I can't believe he went up there and got shot down and exposed us all. Fucking Gary, man. So there's like that whole thing. That's
plus Elon Musk, man. I mean, he's gonna turn fucking tunnels into like highways and shit like that.
And I'm telling you, I've been telling people this for a year. Mars is gonna be I'll tell you right now where these people are gonna find themselves. Underwater. Like in a habitat, right, in the ocean somewhere, or underground in a habitat somewhere with either no windows because we can't have glass windows because the differential in atmosphere or whatever the situation is, or these smart windows that the resolution is so good you swear you're looking outside at a dead desert planet. You know what I mean? But they're gonna just totally fill up their reserves of humanity. That's just to say that possibly this whole doom and gloom scenario that people have been on about for the last several hundred years, that maybe only happened a few hundred years ago, happens again relatively soon. And they know about this and are expanding their underground kind of situation. And now they're like, all right, it's about time. We got to get all these people ready to go to Mars again. You know what I mean? Like, we got to convince them all. We got to get the Mars.
I've been curious about that. I'm wondering if, like, just to play hypothetically with flat Earth, because I don't necessarily buy flat Earth or anything, but like, I like to play with these ideas, and I'd be more apt to say that maybe Mars and Inward weren't like they weren't fake, like they were real objects possible. I don't know, it's not, that doesn't fit flat Earth, of course.
Well, no,
what's
not even
crazy
close.
But I'm thinking like objects in our, so picture the Earth as a flat plane that stretches out, as flat earthers say. We have no idea because we were trapped in this ice wall and all that. And outside of that, maybe you can literally travel so far that those distant like an object like Mars is like close enough to
right,
like
it is
see.
like,
And it's like
right
it's
overhead
another
or something, right?
it's another
like
giant chunk of rock, like the same way that flat earthers will say, we're not necessarily against the idea of like asteroids and stuff, because who knows how big this dome possibly could be.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm honestly, I'm with all of it. The flat Earth, not so much the spherical of a certain size Earth, because that's a little bit kind of easy to debunk when they encode all the satanic symbolism in the mathematics and everything else. So I mean, that's a little bit rough.
Well, what's also interesting there, dude, is that like we say satanic symbolism, quote unquote,
but
satanic symbolism,
it's just materialistic symbolism. It's
it
all
is,
based
and that
on
word
carbon.
too. That word Satan is not even what we interpret it now. It's not even as like the Babylonians
for all the
interpreted
laymen
it.
out there, that see this stuff. It's satanic or Luciferian. And it's all the same to most people. It really is.
Absolutely.
So I tend to lump it in with the common understanding. Unfortunately,
I totally get that.
Doesn't make it any better. But so you have that material coding in 666, and so it's just a representation of the physical. It
is, yes.
and that's all it is. And
the
that's
dense,
cool.
the low vibration.
Well, this world is a certain vibration. This realm. I'm kind of the mind that it's a lot more complicated than flat or round. I think shape is a stupid thing to even try to call reality, because it's like that immense and unbelievable. Then you have like the double slit experiment,
Yeah, we're behind
where,
part of this too.
you
So
know
it's
what I
like,
mean? Yeah.
eh.
So if you're observing something, making it real at the same time, and you also are everything
Yeah,
at the same time,
that's
like
a
it's just,
conundrum.
there's so much more to it that it's like you can't so simplify it to put it in a little monkey brain. You know what I mean? And that's exactly
Yeah.
what we've done. We've personified every freaking force that we know. It all has a god, a person named after it, and a planet in the sky.
Mhm.
But you zoom in on these planets and they're just bright lights to your camera from that
The
perspective.
gas giants anyway.
But I'm kind of with the idea of this kind of I don't know, dome or whatever this layering situation that's happening apparently above us is. Like we can't shoot stuff straight up or it splashes. It does this weird thing when it hits
Nukes,
whatever
yeah.
up there, whether it's space or not, but like does this weird thing. We were trying to blow it up in the 50s,
Right.
so
It
it's
just-
like, what were we doing up there just for fun, blowing up the atmosphere? Like that doesn't seem like, unless you're trying to get something done,
Yeah,
like
dude.
say you're the cabal trying to bring on another flood, would you try to knock down this
knows?
thing that's up there? Who knows
Yeah,
what they were
man.
doing? It's been all bad for so many hundreds of years, and part of it is based on situations like have happened in Switzerland, dude, and like how these people have come together in one place to kind of build up the clout of this area, and build up people's patience and tolerance with their shady dealings and stuff. Like, dude, they've been at work on this for better part of probably 700 or 800 years.
That's nuts.
So this is like a slow go. All these small revolutions, wars around the world. A lot of people attribute Napoleon to being kind of this bad character, that was going and kind of decimating things. But then there are some that believe that Napoleon was the one trying to root all these people out. But then a couple of them ended up, these bankers, this merchant class, these Swiss and Swedish, they got to know him, they got buddy with him. And, somewhere along the line, like the French kind of revolution kind of turns around and starts doing something different based on our history. It kind of, everything shifts in a really weird way that screams manipulation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? When you start seeing things trend to the right and then it just takes a beeline back the other way, or a king steps in that supposedly has this best interest in mind, all the while his cohorts are of the old group.
Right.
So there's a lot of this kind of juggling around of names, of people, of situations. And what you wind up with is, the Switzerland of today with all of these flags, these different areas and different flags. And essentially the old Swiss setup was the old Swiss Confederacy. That language is interesting, first of all, but this was formed in the 14th century. And it enjoyed imperial immediacy in the Holy Roman Empire. What exactly that means, I have not looked into. It's pretty interesting.
Could have to do with that Swiss
Apparently
guard.
it's a privileged constitutional and political status rooted in German feudal law, under which imperial estates of the Holy Roman Empire, such as imperial cities, prince bishoprics, and secular principalities, and individuals such as imperial knights, were declared essentially free from, the issues, whatever the church was pushing, the taxes and things like this. So they were, allowed to kind of carry on without any tax from the church. This is why, when you look at the Swiss flag and you see that Templar cross, why would the church, harm these guys? They're the ones that rallied up everybody to go around the world and loot and pillage and, destroy whatever this old world was. And, a lot of people right now are thinking the old world was like decimated in one fell swoop in the 1800s. And no, that definitely was not the case. This has been going on since back, before, a lot of these places were even countries, back before the Swiss were the Swiss, back before they were even this old Swiss Confederacy. This Confederacy is a product of these people. And you look at the names behind this. The Confederation of Eight Cantons was politically and militarily successful for more than a century, culminating in the Burgundy Wars of the 1470s. And there's this, in this environment, you have France, you have the Habsburgs, You have, you look at the Habsburg flag, it's the double-headed eagle, right? So that's interesting. You know, you have France, the fleur-de-lis, you know, which has its own symbolism.
Oh yeah.
A little after that, we have the Swabian War, which is interesting. You know, you go down to Antarctica, we have New Swabenland down there. And so this is all the same people, man. Like these are,
Yeah.
you know, all the same people flexing their muscles. And, you know, it's mostly outlined in history that a lot of these places are kind of at odds with this Holy Roman Empire. But I definitely, you know, don't think that was the case. I don't think they were at odds with this Holy Roman Empire at all. But like, you start looking into where did the Holy Roman Empire come from?
Yeah.
And
That's very curious.
yeah, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole for another day, because it's crazy. I mean, but like Switzerland and the relationship with Germany and Sweden and all of these, you know, areas up in Finland, in this northern area that, you know, if you look at the Bach saga as maybe a piece of it, you're going, well, what if these people were kind of segregated for a little bit, right? And, you know, and then, yeah, you know, suddenly they have a path out, or they create their own path, you know what I mean, out, and maybe cause something to happen, or, you know, that's the thinking of a theorist, you know, is to theorize, right? So we theorize. We go, well, what if something happened, or what if they created a technology and their solace over there, you know? And
well, I do think that's a part of it. I mean, down the road, because Atlantis falls, no matter what story you hear, no matter what account we unearth,
well,
or
man, and it's just like kind of oddly jumping back to the Swiss when we bring up Atlantis. It's crazy. In Atlantis, you have the beginnings of what later supposedly became the Egyptian Empire, or, you know, the land of Kemet, the Black Land, right?
Yeah.
Which, you know, there's a lot of rabbit holes you can go down with that.
Right, Saga as well, because Saga, I've heard it claimed that Kemet actually can be traced back to meaning Bach, which meant goat.
Wow. And so I knew there was a reason why I was getting into this, man. And
think about this real quick, that the connotation of it meaning the Black Land has been at least used. It may not be correct or entirely correct, but it's been used by people trying to reclaim the blackness of the old kings, the old lineage of Egypt. Rightfully so. They were definitely dark people. And it was, you know, robbed of them by white colonists. But unfortunately, there's this other interpretation that might lead back to the goat, which leads to the box, which leads to a bunch of white people.
Right.
So it's like a divide and conquer.
It's wild, dude. Definitely. It's the polarity of this realm. I mean, it's so incredibly masterful, you know. For a long time, and a lot of people are still very kind of upset about the duality of this world and the polarity of it. But you really have to like deep down and ask yourself, if it was any other way, you really think you'd be having any fun? You know, you really think that you'd have a whole lot to dwell on, think about, ponder in the middle of the night, never be bored a moment? You know, a lot of these things that I find beautiful about life didn't always, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't always, you know, find a lot of this stuff appealing to my mind hole, but I do now. And, you know, it seems to me that a lot of this kind of chaos is put here for us to grow. You know, whether we want to or not at the moment is a different story. But so going back to that phrase Bach, or that's the term Bach, and the Kemet, meaning, you know, the black, but it can also be associated with you know, the Bach, which is a male goat.
Right.
And you go back to Switzerland, you start looking at these cantons and their flags. One of them, let me see if I can remember. Well, I can't pull it up right now. I don't remember what the
for those listening, we apologize.
For those listenings, we've
this
got
is a great visual.
This
episode,
is I mean, look up Swiss canton flags, and you will see a flag that has of course, you know, talking about a Bach. We have a Bach on this flag, mouth open, tongue hanging out,
Boom, yeah.
wang hanging out, everything like fully with the male gusto, right? Like just
Yes.
putting it out there, pow.
Very Aries.
so yes, you have this Aries aspect. You also have this Bach type of aspect. So that's interesting in itself. Man, you start going, how do I get rid of this thing? Hold on a second. I gotta move this. I'm not a very avid screen share, folks.
I'm
Sorry
not
about that.
either. I'm terrible with it. I don't know what to do. That's why
Okay,
like on
it's
horns up.
Canton. This is the canton of Graubünden, the one I was talking about earlier. That's bound by grays. So that's kind of wild, dude. Tie that to the Bach saga, history of being isolated and or underground. Very interesting. And then you go into some more of these flags of this area. Another thing that we wind up with is the ram's horn on a shield being carried by a basilisk, which is some people might say demonic or evil, right? But I see this as related to this serpent that we see, coined all around the world, right? Supposedly, even in South America, this feathered serpent, this plumed, serpent man comes and teaches them all of these things. This light complected god figure, Quetzalcoatl, right, was supposedly this kind of serpent god, this feathered serpent. So you have like this symbolism like everywhere, and then you also have the constellation of Draco,
right?
So you have all of these kind of like very fractal woven in layers of everything, and you can almost look anywhere in the world, look at their flags, like pick a small grouping, go to Google Earth, plot a circle with your eyes, and just go right there, search up the flags in that area. You're going to find a lot of the same thing over and over again, the same symbolism.
And it's alchemy too, this serpent, it's always bird and snake, This basilisk is a great example of that.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. It's always the, at least at one time in the past, the bird and the snake were combined, right?
Right.
And you come like into, current time, based on the symbolism in like some of the newer countries' flags, you have this kind of a deviation, this split. The dragon is separate from the eagle, and the serpent's at war with the hawk, right? And the Mexican flag. So so I mean, they show us all the same symbols, they kind of infer different things going on, but in reality, I do feel it's part of just one mass kind of over thing.
It's weird how
it's so crazy, dude. I don't even know. I can't pretend to be hella informed on any of this, because it's so confusing the way
this is just the beginning, man. Like we gotta dredge up all the different examples and keep what sticks and throw out what doesn't fit. It's a process.
It's wild. And some will have the dog, like one of them's a dog, a wolf on a shield, right? Another one is a bear. Another one still is like, so we have all these different constellations that are pretty much visible from the north, for the most part. We've got those on a lot of these flags. So we have this as above, so below, very similar to, kind of Egyptian thing going on, where they have different gods or different figures representing different constellations, different places set up like different different whatever you call it, constellations, compilations, all the same shit. So anyway, you've got another one, and this one caught my eye because I've been looking into this mud flood event and what could have caused it and so on and so forth. And one of the theories is the fascis is a symbol, a bundle of rods wrapped around an axe. And there's a theory that this is a symbol for a weapon that these people lord over us, and is causing these crazy events. Could it be harp? Possibly, right? Like, you start looking into what's capable.
This looks like divide and conquer. It's a shield and an axe.
Oh no, this is a bundle of rods tied to an axe. So it's interesting, the symbolism behind the fascis. It's like all together we're unbreakable.
Okay.
But I think that in certain circles there's a more sinister kind of feel to this, because it looks like a Gauss rifle, or like an electromagnetic weapon of some kind. And
Oh,
like that they're inferring that they're the holders of this power.
interesting.
So that's a whole nother kind of crazy rabbit hole. But like these flags, dude, and you start looking and you see all the different celestial kind of symbolism, and that just reminds me a lot of Egypt and what we're told about, like the just the past. Even before that, going back to Atlantis, these were like master astronomers or
Right.
astrologers and astronomers, right? Like these were the supposedly, the one community that basically everything broke out of after this massive cataclysm and kind of spread out all over the place. And that may very well be true, that there was a kind of massive civilization at one point and has since fell to ruins and or reestablished itself as all of these other places, but another interesting kind of weird tie is one of the mottos for one of these areas in Switzerland is post tenebra lux, which means after darkness I hope for light. And I kept thinking maybe as an error I've been thinking underground, right? So these phrases are making sense in that kind of context. And so I'm just kind of like,
Damn.
like wrapping my head around all this stuff and seeing the same symbolism that we see in flags all the way to this day. And people swear that there's like this kind of war going on between these different factions, between the Luciferians and the Satanists, and between the Rothschilds and like the Russians, and but then like behind all of that stuff you have even behind the Bilderberg group, like way behind, and things we don't even comprehend or see, there's still an element of control that like we're not grasping, that's kind of dictating what everyone's next move is. Because I don't know, maybe I have little faith in humanity, but I don't see the orchestration happening between these people, at least that we're shown. So
Yeah, I think they're the puppets. So we just see the behavior of puppets. That's all we see ever, 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 ever. And we
yeah,
look at it
I
as
wasn't always able to
consequences, and
see
it's
that,
not, it's, I would say it's like the further in you go, the less control is in humanity's hands. And I'm not saying that means aliens or reptilians. I think it means natural flow of things. And that's just my theory right now. It's just a working idea, but that
and even
it's
if
kind of
it
like
is,
that
even if it is
idea.
other
Well,
humans, right? If it's other humans, then clearly these are humans with a vastly superior cognitive ability to and possibly lifespan to be able to play this stuff out. Either that or extreme patience, to play this stuff out over, in most cases, a small assertment like we have done in Iraq takes 30 to 40 years. That's half of somebody's life. You know what I mean? And they've done this over and over and over again everywhere.
So that's what I was going with that. I was thinking I'm not saying that people aren't, controllers per se, but it's almost as if because they're aware of the way things are and the way things go, they could take advantage of that and they can play their hands better. And they do keep all that secret. But that's
Yeah,
kind of
it's
where
just
I'm going.
it shows a broader perspective, whether it's
Yeah.
collectively or not. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like the crazy debate that comes up in our community is like, okay, is it like Overlord playing puppet strings, or is it just the knowledge that's allowing, you know what I mean, this kind of shifting to happen over like generations, right? All of history to be essentially erased and rewritten within like a few hundred years. Like that takes patience and planning.
Yes.
And like conveying that to the next person down the line effectively, when most of us don't work well together. Most of us are so busy fighting each other and at odds and everything that we don't even notice this crazy neutral state over, you know what I mean, in the Alps that has just cashed in on everything for the last like 500 years. They're Templar stronghold, right? Blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, in the money nonstop. And like, not once has anybody of relevance thought to go, well, hey, what's up with those guys? What's going on over there? And if you do, what probably happens if you're powerful enough and you do kind of say, hey, man, no, I'm going to blow the whistle on you. They just buy you out. They've got everything. You know what I mean? Like, you could buy anybody. You can buy me out. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. You know what I mean?
And
the price is really right.
It's so weird too that like, it's like you can point your finger at these, like you were saying, like you can point your finger to these faces, these puppets, and there's always, more layers behind, more curtains behind the curtains, right? And it's like, I guess where I'm going with the idea of like natural forces is like, on our level of things, all these humans are doing these nefarious things. And for us with the eyes to see, we can kind of see this pattern everywhere. Yet the closer we get to it, whether it's just media blocking it or, it turns out to not be the Rothschilds necessary or whatever. It's like,
right.
We can never
away,
necessarily point to what it really is. But then if you get the chance to like zoom out in some crazy experience or something, you kind of see that whether it's actually on an individual basis, a family basis, a legacy basis, all the time, or if it somehow, if you get close to it and it just turns out to be random sometimes, and it's you can't point it, man. Yet it's you get wild. Way out there when you expand out, suddenly it paints that picture. It paints a picture with a personality, with that human behavior controlling everything. Yes. And it's like, well, how the fuck is this happening when it's not happening? But it is happening, but it's not happening.
That's why people need the idea of manipulation by literal physical outside sources. Right. People need this because they're not, and it's unfortunate because they're just not able to step back and also, I mean, look into themselves and recognize these patterns they're seeing outside of themselves. Absolutely. As things that have happened to them in a different fashion. That's something I really like, dude. I love about this community is that A, everyone's open-minded, and B, people have a sense of perspective that is generally a little panned back. You know what I mean? Yeah. All right. How does this work with that? We all have spent so much time growing up being drilled about the specifics. 1 + 1 = 2. Princess Diana died in a car crash in a tunnel on an accident, right? Like, we're drilled all this stuff and we know all of this stuff. And like, unless you take a moment to just throw everything out the window and kind of start over and go, well, or just shatter everything on the floor and start picking out the pieces that make sense to you based on your, reactions in the past, based on your honest self-reflections, right? Like, because we've all been a little Rothschildy at a moment, absolutely. We've all been, you know what I mean? We've all been a little bit, Fidel Castro at some time. Like, I don't even know what the man was like. I'm just saying we've all been that. We've all been all these characters. Dude, I've been a little Sleepy Joe, at the wheel sometimes, right? Like, let's be honest.
The conspiracy
I've been a little Hunter Biden even. Why not? Maybe not to the extent that guy pushed it, but you know what I mean? We've all got these fractal archetypes, essences of these different folks, and then like on a much grander scale, these archetypes kind of flow together into these like secret societies and things, right? And they all get together and they're like, nope, listen, we're such and such archetype, lodge number, you know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. And they all get together. They're like, all right, what's the doom agenda today, guys? You know what I mean? Oh, just, rituals and sex magic. Okay. Sounds like fun, because they're all like mind. So, I mean, this just happens. Right. The people that are into space will call it gravity, but it's the human experience is almost the opposite of magnetic. You know what I mean? It doesn't ever make as much sense as just polarity and magnetic. You have opposites attracting and bouncing off of each other also. And like, there's all this crazy chaotic conflict. And I have yet to really dig into like chaos theory and all of that stuff. But I'm sure there's something to it, like when you walk into a situation and it's going to be a bad situation, but you're like, and you just go along with it anyway, or or the other way, you go into a situation, it's going to be great for you, but you're like, nope, not going to do it, and it's like, so is that like an element of chaos within ourselves that's just spicing it up, or like, is it like some people think, oh, you have a demonic thought, right?
Oh, right.
Or you have, a monkey on your back, or whatever the term is for this like outside influence, or you're channeling dark beings, or any of these other things. But like, really, is it really all just us? Like, like
Yeah,
individually,
man.
like it's mind blowing.
The
So this
best
went a little different direction than I had anticipated, but it's also strange when you just open your eyes and kind of like go, what?
Yeah, I kind
Wait.
of figured we didn't have a chance to like just shoot the shit and zone out before. So like,
No, we'll do it now.
this
It's
was
awesome.
bound to happen where we were going to
Yeah.
start on Switzerland. We end up with aliens and all kinds of other things,
Well,
you know,
and
but this was
like,
great.
oh, this is what we got to work with, what we got, people, and we're just working with what we've got. What's going on in the ether right now? I was talking to Flat Earth Dave earlier today, and he put it really well. He said, they have us, these people in control have us priming the ether for them, with this
That's the
predictive
best way to put it.
programming and things like that. And yeah, I think that that's an amazing way to put it. And the ether has been thoroughly primed on this alien front, apparently, because it's got all of us talking about it. So you can't blame it
Yeah.
on us, folks. It's just,
I mean, shit, I've been
the
talking
ether's
about it
just
since I was
primed.
like 12, but
Oh,
still.
dude, yeah, since X-Files and all that other stuff. And
Damn, I want to believe, yeah, but I don't really anymore. Not in that way. I don't know.
yeah, after I found out about, deep underground military bases and all the genetic testing and freaks and all this crazy stuff and sex traffic and all this stuff, I'm like, nope, aliens don't exist. I'm good, dude. you guys can have that crap, because essentially you're just pouring in your energy into the idea of it, dude. So, and if everything, like, off on this crazy everything is you tangent, if it's the one mind and everything is you, just by thinking about it, just by lending it credence, boom, it exists.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So like, dude, are we creating, like, with all this news and the laptop's real or it's not, are we just creating these people's situations out of our own thoughts and memories, and then poof, instantly, like magic, because a creator had to have dictated the rules of this whole thing, it happens, you know what I mean? Like, and
Well, also like the alien thing, I don't know.
it's
There's
a
parts
rough
of
one,
it
dude.
that
Aliens and angels, it's pretty touchy, and it's crazy because you have like these two polarized camps, like, no, they're angels, no, they're aliens. Like,
yeah.
like, and
Well,
then
I
other
think
people are like, nope, just people. It's just
we've
people
just
like
been
us.
so disconnected from ourselves, and that's the main goal that they quote unquote always
yeah,
are
for sure.
pushing, because that's when you start to pay attention to yourself and all that, you if we do that, the further down you go, like, you find all these ancient concepts of the sacred other, this, and even the idea of the yin yang standing for a fish chasing its own tail. Some of these tales are so old, and they blend right into UFO community, honestly. And I just wonder how much, like, again, we go back, you and I both say that, like, if we're everything, then okay, well, that's all more of us on some level. At least we have to at least start there. But then also, like, on the physical level, I think it's good to start with, again, how could humans do that? And then if that can be answered, then that doesn't mean the book closes, right? But that just means that might as well work with the model that we have and the scale that we can prove, or at least come close to proving. The idea about the reptilians and everything, like the real physical, actual draconian reptilian. And I'm not trying to
like, after seeing
disrespect
the
anyone with
symbolism,
experiences,
yeah, no doubt, dude. But like the
symbol, yeah.
symbolism in the flags and everything in the writing, the renditions of the dragon and the serpent, and throughout time that we can see anyway, throughout time and history and scripture and all this stuff, like, and then to call it like lizard people, that's like repersonifying a concept that was maybe derived from like a group of persons. It's so weird, dude, how this splitting and recombining of situations and tales and all this stuff happens. I don't know if I can say yes, like actual physical lizard people.
Well, I've heard people say, like, well, listen, even if it's symbolism and it's associated with certain human qualities, that doesn't mean that they didn't learn it from something else or give that symbolism to those people because of an alien or this or that. I'm like, well, that's fine. But when you trace back the reptilian symbolism, the dragon and all this, yeah, they did see it and they got it from something. It's the snake. Just the very act of it wilting its skin is like such a central part of the metaphor of what the serpent stands for. It stands for that change and that evolution and that progression and that cycle as well. Man.
Yeah,
And then it becomes
definitely.
personified big time.
Well,
and then it gets
then
attached.
and then it gets attributed to materialism and everything else, and then you have this eagle situation that's kind of like this lofty, kind of opposite the serpent, more airy, right? And there's within all of the flags of the world, there's a lot of elemental kind of alchemy in there too, where like black might stand for earth and white might stand for sky, and so on. I mean, you can look into this stuff, it's everywhere. You have dual symbolism, like a silver key and a gold key in many houses in Europe and also in Germany, especially in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. And this represents the key to the material key, and the spiritual key. So it's all just like a throwback into these same concepts that we all struggle with every day, like within ourselves. This polarity, this duality, decision A versus decision B. So it's like, all right, if this is encoded well enough to put into a crest or, a flag, and have obviously tons of thought go into this and have it make sense on so many different levels, that just screams to the length of time whatever has been going on here. You know what I mean, with humanity, whether there was larger people in the past or not, whether they're still there. Some would say, oh, if they still exist, they must be pulling the strings. I don't think that that's necessarily the case, but look around you at what your fellow man has done to each other, right? Like this is probably the biggest thing that leads me to believe, okay, if there's big people pulling the strings, right, then there's probably bigger people, than them pulling their, you know what I mean? I think that if it's fractal in one layer, it has to be an infinite fractal layer, right? So if there are larger people pulling our strings, then there's going to be bigger ones than them. Maybe the ones that are bigger than the ones pulling our strings are lizards. We don't know. You know what I mean? So it gets so crazy, like when you're actually like, well, I'll consider anything. Maybe it's an addiction of mine now since I've ditched all the rest. Considering thoughts.
Oh yeah. Well,
it's
I'll
a
humor
good thing.
that
For a minute. For sure.
I got a weird theory too that the thing that is in control and has been this whole time is our trauma. And and this is just the physical material interpretation I have, is that we were rocked by something at some point. Something caused an absolute cataclysm. Randall Carlson talks about that as well, about how Halloween is remembered all around the world, that time period at least, as this day of remembrance. And he kind of suggests that it's because we were just, unbeknownst to each other, all acknowledging this time when we lost fucking everybody. And if you can imagine the trauma that happens to a single individual from an abusive relationship, and then take that fractal and send it outward to what would happen to a people if destruction occurred, and all the generational trauma and bad behavior, the narcissism, the psychopathy, the mental illness, all of it that would pass down and embed itself into our humanity. Now, I'm not saying we can't go into more fractal, more spiritual or higher order meaning to it, because that's always there. Like we said, even if it looks like an accident up close, you step outside, there's fucking order to everything. It's unbelievable. But it's just on a physical material level, it seems it's manifesting as this trauma. And of course, these horrible egos can come out of that. And so both can be true. It can be this natural thing that occurred to us, but then it gave birth to these horrible people that had these
Right.
mentalities that have stuck with us, embedded in humanity, embedded in the goodness of
I'm with
humanity
that.
this
Yeah,
whole
I'm
damn
I'm with
time.
that, dude.
Isn't
And
that
you know,
interesting?
in a situation of absolute chaos and calamity, you know, look at it realistically, the nice guy won't last. The nice guy will
Nice
not
guys
be
finish
able to
last,
survive.
right?
He's not going to be able to survive in a post-apocalyptic freaking wasteland, crazy world. Murder and, you know, greed are key in survival, right? So
Right.
if that makes a lot of sense as to why possibly there is a faction of humanity that's kind of like that. But then also, like, you have the Hopi talking about the ant people coming up and saving them, right? So maybe there are others, you know, during that cataclysm that found their way to make their own communities work with kindness and with love, and maybe this is how
Yeah.
love and kindness carried on. And then, you know, when something else unfolded and everything gets back to a weird new normal, right? Like they
Right,
all
right,
go
right.
upstairs and they're like, come out, and holy shit, that's what we've been dealing with for the past couple thousand to 12,000 years, is this freaking war between these two very different but very similar factions of humanity, some
Right.
tainted by hate and,
Yeah,
you
these
know, bloodlust,
mentalities.
and then, yeah, and then the others, you know, all about giving, you know, giving knowledge, giving love, giving respect and hope. So like, yeah, something seems to have happened. There seems to have been this just, and it's weird, this dualistic kind of conflict. And that's why I think that I dug into Switzerland. I'm like, what is going on here? There's such a duality to everything. There's
Yes.
no neutrality. Like, what is this? You know, and rightfully so. It's definitely suspect. You start looking at Knights Templar. Okay, these were the bankers, you know, of the Crusades who kind of helped push this whole crazy war along, and supposedly were not part of like the Catholic Roman Catholic Church. They were
Right.
kind of doing it on their own. I don't know about that, especially when like now the Swiss Guard, you know, defends the Vatican,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah.
and
All
it's like,
bullshit.
come on. So like all of that's just like, all right, so these are those people, right? Like
Yeah,
these are
man.
those underground people that, you know,
Dude, let's
during the
do
last
that.
cataclysm, they're underground.
We're changing it right now, guys. Just listeners, watch, viewers, listen. We are Randy and I are going to change the dynamic where you're not going to see the memes anymore with the 3. You're going to see the 4, okay? But instead
Yeah.
of finance being London, it'll be Switzerland, and we'll put the city of London under the mentality of the family, because I think that's what's missing in that dynamic, to show that this is a family situation going on at its very fucking roots. So yeah, you have
Yeah.
the system itself, the 3 big areas of power, but who's it for? So I think it should be that 4
Yeah,
dynamic.
but they can't do that because they can't adopt ancient, you know, spiritual meaning, like out of a triangle, you know. That's, you can't get the 369 out of a square.
I know,
They already have
but
a square they worship. They can't, you know,
right,
they
of
can't
course, yeah.
bastardize the cube. No, we can't cut the cube down. Come on,
But
guys,
hey,
that's blasphemy.
you know what else is interesting? Just taking it back to the ant people. I've been having this theory lately about, like, well, with me getting into phonetics and root language and everything like that. Ant, I wonder if it ever was referring to people from the South, like the Southern Hemisphere, maybe. Because you think about it, our ice age mostly destroyed the Northern Hemisphere and affected the Northern Hemisphere, if I'm not mistaken.
Right,
That's what
that's what we're
geologists
told.
say.
Yeah, that's what we're told for sure.
Right.
But
So
there's not
that
a whole
being,
heck of a lot of land in the South, though. Like when you really look into it, you have some
you're
parts of
right.
Australia, but there's,
But
yeah.
Antarctica may have been a completely different climate at the time. If we're going with the globe, I know I have to preface and put an
No,
asterisk
you know,
there,
even if we're not, you know, if something was happening to cause an extreme freeze on one side, you know, who knows? There's evidence of possibly a perturbed kind of sun rotation, you know, in the flat Earth model. You know, it
right,
being
yeah, there is.
essentially a piece of electronics of it kind of getting jostled, and that's why our you know, our year is different than it had been previous to a certain point, so on and so forth. There's all kinds of crazy, you know, stuff when you open your mind. There's so many wild rabbit holes to go down. But yeah, dude, I like that, adding that family element to this control situation that we
Yeah.
see. That's huge, man. That's what's left out, because look,
That's what they're
these
famous
Swiss
for in the
people,
news too. Like we only see the royal, we don't see them making decisions. We just hear about their family affairs all the time.
yeah,
That is
that's
literally
it.
our symbol for the family in this
Well, and
world.
meanwhile, everybody ignores Switzerland, where
Right.
all the dirty money goes through, dude. Like
Because
all
they don't
of
want
it.
anyone following the money.
Right, but they're like, hey, if you made anything on crypto this year, you better file your taxes. You know what I mean? But yeah, don't mind Switzerland,
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
don't mind them over there. They're doing
Crypto's
God's
a
work.
honeypot of its own.
Yeah, they're
thing.
doing God's work over there.
Yeah.
So it's just, dude, it's crazy. I love the idea of there being I don't love the idea of there being a cataclysm in the past. That sucks. But it
Right.
definitely seems to be the case,
Especially in this
from
cyclical place that we're in.
well, and from tales and from even what we consider valid descriptions like the Bible, or shit, most origin stories talk about this flood,
Oh, yeah.
that has happened. But like,
Yeah,
if that flood happened recently enough to wipe out the previous era's information and everything, then all we're going to have is the tale of that one. You know what I mean? So if it had happened in a time, past even further than that, I personally, I think that a flood and some sort of fiery cataclysm have both happened.
Yeah.
Just because you have this comet situation in like the 1500s, late 1400s, something like that, somewhere around the year, of Columbus and all that fun stuff, where all of our stuff starts up. There's this kind of space where nothing really going on. And it's weird because like all these regions, in this area of Switzerland and Germany, like these didn't start coming about and establishing like a history until like the 1400s. So we have fragmented histories of these places, like going back several hundred years at a time. Like, oh yeah, before 1400, you got to go back to 1000 to find, what I mean, a documented record on any of this area, or you got to go back to like 686 AD, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then they're like, oh yeah, 239 BC, and you're like, oh, okay, fucking 700 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Why is all this history missing?
What's going on here? Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely like massive periods of time where, dude, if you're dealing with, say you're just dealing with 300 or 400 years of like post cataclysm chaos, right? And let's just say that maybe the cover up for that, we'll just call it the Black Death. Tell people there was a plague. We don't want anybody to have any genetic memories about this celestial thing that happened and freaking just burn the world. We don't want that. Like, let's try to lead people away from that. And then we'll come out with a cartoon called The Land Before Time, and there'll be this fiery apocalypse, and we'll sell it to these people, and they'll want it, and they'll love us for it. Like, it's so sick and twisted that you have to have spent time underground to comprehend this process of manipulation that's been like expertly like honed against us all.
And then we're back out of the human experience. I flow in and out because I would say out of time. Even it doesn't make any sense for them to be able
in here,
unless it's also a natural part of it or something. It's maybe people just taking advantage of a situation that's already happening naturally, perhaps. You know what I mean?
Right. At the most human level, for sure.
Absolutely,
at that most human, day-to-day level, absolutely. I mean, we're all, and once you kind of are honest with yourself about the capabilities of the human ego and the human wants and will and all of these things, these different factors, right? Anybody out there, you're being holier than thou if you say there's not a situation that you wouldn't engage in, because given a circumstance, everybody would do everything. That's what the process of experience kind of shows us, and why you can see kind of the purpose when people say, what's the meaning of life? I look at it as though to experience, right? To be, right? Like, I think, therefore I am, and I am, therefore, I be. So I am, like,
therefore I think.
Right. So going down that, you're having an experience, and I'm recognizing that you over there, Andy, are having your own experience.
Right.
And like, we've been divided so much that we don't stop to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. And I think that this is a lot stronger of a type of connection than we're allowed to understand. Sometimes when I think about what somebody else might be going through, if I actually am, passionate about considering what's going on with this person, my mind will show me a scenario that involves being that person and involves possibly some trauma in my past that this person may be trying to overcome. And
Empathy,
you know,
man.
it's so much deeper than this face value garbage that we're all being, you know what I mean, blanketed and just barraged with. It's just madness. And like once you dig into, and it doesn't matter what direction you look, Andy, I swear, if you look for information in one direction, you will find it.
And that's
it doesn't matter. I mean, if I look right now for proofs of a spherical earth, I will find it.
Yes.
If I look for proof right now of proofs of flat earth, I will find it. If I look right now for proofs of we're in inner earth, I'll find that. Or we're on Mars, I'm gonna find that, because that's my intent, manifesting this in front of me. Yes, I'm using vehicles to manifest, like a computer and typing it into Google, but essentially I'm controlling what I'm looking for. So whether I want to admit it to myself or not, I'm you're choosing your own adventure, you know what I mean? And like, so when you pan back, kind of like we're saying, you pan back out of time, like what is the like accumulation of all of those very small choices? And then you kind of start to see it like a risk board, like a very high speed risk situation where it's like, okay, this person's taking over this person's integrity, and this person's taking over this person's capacity to love. They're stealing that from them. So there's all these very small energy interactions going on from person to person. But then like on the big grander scale, you have, Russia invaded Ukraine to, have this other stuff going on. That's just like a crazy fractal mirror, an upsize of a conflict between this lady and her brother in her living room that morning. Right. You know what I mean? So
it all starts here, man. It all starts within, and that's again the generational trauma, man. I think my take on the resets that we say, like, it seems like there's been a bunch of different resets. I feel like we keep almost figuring out this original situation that we were all in. I think no matter how many resets they try to do, that's just my take, that
right, like it just
we're
reaches
still
that
getting
plateau
pieces of that first world, and maybe throughout every single world that's been, we're getting a lot of pieces mixed together, and we're not and we're finally trying to divide out when this one ended, and
right.
it's amazing,
no doubt. And we all secretly have this kind of underlying knowing about certain things. Almost anybody you ask that's delved into this old world topic, I don't like to call it Tartaria because it's just that's not accurate, but this old world topic, dude, like most of us swear, like I feel so comfortable and familiar looking at this imagery and seeing these places, and like a familiarity, a weird vague sense of familiarity, right? Like, and this kind of calls into question reincarnation and genetic memory, and things like this. Dude, after seeing Hollywood put it out there in Assassin's Creed, I was like, there's genetic memory. They fucking told us there's genetic memory right there, right? As soon as they decided that game could become a movie, they're telling something,
right.
And then you see Infinites comes out, and it's about this guy or these people that remember all their past lives, and it's like a fucking curse to this one guy who's a nihilist. And on the other side you have the believers. They don't ever say what they believe in, but they've had like countless past lives and they remember them all, and they kind of steer the direction of what people are doing on Earth. Maybe it's just as valid of an explanation as anything I've got. So I was like, that's pretty interesting. Maybe there's something going on like that, but maybe it's more not so clear and a little more fractal, and each of us has a small piece of what we're remembering, and unless we work together to hash it out and have the conversation, and not feel like like society would want us to feel, and feel like we're being stupid about saying this or that, or me bringing up my theories and weird thoughts on Switzerland to you, like,
right,
most people would feel like, oh, that's just a waste of my time. That person doesn't want to hear that. I'm worthless. And a lot of that attitude, it's crazy, goes along with as Flat Earth Dave would say, the heliocentric nonsense, of like, I'm alone in the universe. Nobody can understand me. I'm flying out of control. So, like in a very fractal sense, the thought of flying out of control in space on a planet is the bigger version of what each of us maybe would feel on the inside if we didn't know the truth. And most of us don't know the truth, and most of us are comfortable not looking for it because we see the easy, the bag of Frito-Lays and the Disney Channel, and we're like, cool, you know what I mean? But like, hopefully at some point, people kind of start to come around, and I think they are. I mean, I did. So, I've actually got faith in humanity for once, because dude, if I can kind of free up some thoughts and pull some information kind of out of wherever I'm looking, and put together pieces and have an enjoyable time doing it, and start to realize that, hey, maybe this is like the purpose. And like you're saying about the reset, about them possibly happening, like when society kind of as a collective reaches a certain point, it's like, well, we've wrapped up this one, guys, story's over. Maybe there is some kind of a massive exodus or rapture or something, or maybe it's just lights out, everybody's done. Like, we took this one until literally everybody has figured out that it's a rerun on top of a rerun on top of a rerun, but a different a different like fractal layer to it, or a different just crazy interesting kind of lifestyle set, or but ultimately though, it may not be this outside power kind of orchestrating. It may just be a very natural kind of within us all, based on, it seems to be based on free will to a certain extent, and
both, right,
and allowing, giving your permission for things, hence the predictive programming and things like this. So in order to have that grasp on all that stuff, you kind of have to have like some kind of a cache of information, or have a very tight-knit family, right? Like, this is the other part where that family becomes super key. Is like, when you get those people in your family, you start laying out the family knowledge, the family jewels to them, right? Like, here, now you've got access to the family jewels. Man, I don't think they're talking about rocks, dude. I think they're talking about the secrets, man, and if your family is, really inbred and kind of falling apart, you might want to make some other people part of the family, kind of indirectly. So you might form these different groups, right? Or, your son might form a group because he wants a club when he's in high school or whatever. And then you have Skull and Bones, right? So,
right, yeah.
So, and then that's where it all goes bad. And when it all starts going bad, people start waking up, and then it's like, eventually you get to that wall, and you're like, oh, we got to hit the fascist button and break out, the symbolic weapon, and wipe everything out, and you know what I mean, start over. And who knows, man. But
maybe we keep getting closer to finding it out before they can unleash their plan or something, because it does feel like that this time around, or maybe if this is the only time, whatever, it does feel like we're the whole goal is to figure it out before they tell us, because they always tell us.
Pretty much, it seems that way. Yeah. And
we've yet to do it
before it's doom. Yeah. And every time they're like, this is gonna happen, oh, that happened, we told you guys that was gonna happen,
right?
And now you've got a major crazy push of this whole eating blood and all this demonic stuff, and like, so where's that eventually gonna go? Like, is it gonna become like the purge, or are we gonna wind up like that, and then boom, there's your depopulation, everything's legal for a night, you got a bunch of pissed off people.
I mean, they want disillusionment for sure. I mean, that's part of it, but
yeah, dude, definitely.
They could go in so many directions. And this has been awesome, though, man. This has been a great chat.
It was an awesome tangent,
hell yeah,
sure. But I just,
what's needed.
That's my organic kind of broken thought process. It's like,
Same
what can I pull? Why am I finding this interesting right now? I try to pay attention to those little things, like why am I thinking about this? Well, maybe give it a little more thought, see where it goes. And I think that the folks out there kind of are with us on this understanding that it's not all well orchestrated, and it's not all chaotic. It's kind of like this weird mixture of both, which makes it fun to talk about, right? Like,
absolutely,
it could be aliens, could just be the Rothschilds, arch enemy, or whatever. Like it could be any of these things. And man, hopefully, I really do hope though, and I didn't always feel this way. I hope I have some of the answers when I die, so I could be like, "Oh, nailed it!" You know what I mean? Like when I get into the in between, and I'm like looking back, like I hope I got at least a couple right. Like a 2 out of 10. I'll be stoked with the 2 out of 10, dude, for sure.
Yeah, in the life review, like I don't care about my shit. Yeah. Come on, I want to go see what happened with the Bushes or something.
Right? Like I knew it. Yeah. I knew Alex Jones was that comedian. Blah blah blah. Right.
All right, dude. Well, this has been awesome, and for all my listeners, please tell them where they could find you.
Yeah, I'm Random Randy at Red Thread Podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Randomfracts, or send me an email, randomfracts@gmail.com. And yeah. Sweet. So, dude, I appreciate it. And where can my listeners find you, sir?
Yeah, the Deep Share on Instagram and Twitter. I'm on Rockfin at rockfin.com/the Deep Share, Odyssey.com. Nice. I actually, what they have I think everyone on Odyssey gets it. They have a weird kind of address or something with some like numbers and shit. I don't know, but whatever. It's
right
it's
on.
there
Yeah,
on
I
Odyssey. I'm on YouTube.
I'm on Odyssey too. I'll have to start putting more stuff up, but
yeah, contact at thedeepshare.com if you want to hit me up, if you want to be on the show, if you want to argue with my crazy theories, by all means.
Right on.
And yeah, patreon.com/the Deep Share. Check it out.
Nice. Right on. Once again, brother, dude, I appreciate the jam session.
Hell yeah, man.
It was
good
awesome,
stuff.
dude. I'm looking forward to the next time. And may you find more rabbit holes, my friend, and may they treat you
likewise. All right, everybody. Have a great night. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, vegetarian. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay?